This is the building, a large, handsome, late Georgian structure. The aim is that it become a museum and a library. The section over there would be the library. Hopefully there'll be an extra floor put up onto the top, so there'll be about 20 rooms for the library. This section here would become the main galleries. The ground floor, a gallery room. The next floor, a gallery room. Hopefully a third floor, which will be structured, which will again be a gallery and private studio function, with a glass tower in the center coming right down from top to bottom, flooding the whole area with daylight. This is the rear of the same building, the rear of the library section. There would always be the display window indicating what the latest project was. And for entry into the library, one would go through that door and up on all floors. One is to imagine a third floor where that roof is now. Then the large mural. I haven't decided whether I'd like to strip it and bring it back to the original stonework, or indeed to make a new but portable mural on fiberglass. It's 50-50 either way. The new mural, if it was decided on, would be on the theme of the 7 deadly sins and an ironic history of the Barbican. If we go inside, corridor into the library section. The library goes all the way up through the 3 flights here, and hopefully the 4th flight eventually. The ground floor library is art history and art biography, and then a room on metaphysics. We'll just have a quick look at that now. Forgive the gothic creak of the door. The art history section is behind me and goes through a room there, and it combines history and art history monographs of a very specialized nature, from primeval times to contemporary times. This room deals with art biography, so literally from A to Z, from say Alberti right down through to Zurbarán. It sweeps all the way around. Again, some quite specialized material and some of it more populist, but generally speaking a good presentation on the art biography section. One should remember that each one of the rooms that are being looked at should be mentally multiplied at least 3 to 4 times once the library is properly organized, as the bulk of the work are still in boxes. Up above here, through the pierced ceiling, you can see a section of the philosophy room. The art biography room, one comes into the metaphysics room, which is the rarest part of the library. It's divided into a number of different sections, but basically the popular term, the occult, is what applies here. I prefer the word metaphysics. It should be pointed out that the whole aim of the library is to collect information about fanatical and obsessive behavior. Really, it is a body of information about the sources and causes of fascism and of fundamentalist thinking, so characteristic of our times and of times past. One of the rooms that would exemplify that type of fanaticism is the room, in this case, on metaphysics. So there's a section on alchemy, there's a section on ceremonial magic, a section on Jewish mysticism and Kabbalah, and there's a section on witchcraft. If we come closer to the room, then we'll see that it is extremely specialized because it deals with original source material, not just 18th, 19th or 20th century commentaries on it. This is in chronological order historically, so it starts from early times and also with general biography, general bibliographies and catalogues of one kind or another on the tradition, on metaphysics traditions. And it starts from Etruscan times and through to early Greek and Egyptian, and then early Neoplatonic, and the link between pagan and Christian thought, all kinds of mumbo-jumbo regarding Stonehenge and the Druids and Arthur and so on. Then it goes back to the early medieval ages, Ramon Lull, S. Tuid, Roger Bacon, and it includes the original material. So the first publications, for example, 1484, the first Summa Astrologia, the first ever printed book on astrology. and early books on Raymond Lull, and then on through to Trithemius von Spanheimer, the Steganographia, Paracelsus, the first edition of Paracelsus, books of secrets, the first ever translation of Plato from Ficino, Pico della Mirandola, Reuschler, the works of Agrippa, the first edition of Agrippa. It's extremely remarkable to think that this splendid, absolutely right, Renaissance stamped volume is published while Michelangelo is still working on the Sistine Chapel. Theatrum Diabolorum, 92 Ways of Being Possessed by the Devil, including The Wrong Way to Fold Your Trousers by Feyerabend, a friend of Martin Luther. Then through to John Dee, who can be seen as the intellectual hub of the Elizabethan wheel throughout Europe. Giordano Bruno, on through to some kinds of mumbo-jumbo regarding Shakespeare. Of course, there's a different Shakespeare section in the literature room. Then through to Robert Flood, all of his works, Van Helmont, Cudworth, the Cambridge Platonists, various types of grimoires, and then on through to the development of Rosicrucianism and Freemasonry, Cagliostro, Mesmer, physiognomy, phrenology, all kinds of rather nonsensical astrological theories, Ebenezer Sibley, Francis Barrett and the Magus, manuscripts and the last practicing magicians, the development of the Golden Dawn, and on through to the highly coloured humbug of Aleister Crowley and Madame Blavatsky and up to contemporary times. I give that just as a simple example of a chronological sequence of a whole history of fanatical and obsessive belief systems linking the structure of the human body and mind to the infinite cosmos. The section here, perhaps a little more distressing, deals with witchcraft. Again, the 1486 Malleus Maleficarum, the 1512, the 1516, and so on and so on. Probably responsible for the death of at least 250,000 women in the most horrific ways, so that all these sort of paranoid ravings about the purpose of the devil to undermine the God's intentions in all its variations, resulting in things like the brank and the scold and bridles, all put onto women, resulting in some of the most horrific tortures like that. What is interesting about the witchcraft material here is not so much that it represents poetic notions about an ancient wise craft in relation to modern feminism, but that more hard-edged feminist theory, like this kind of material, demonstrates that suddenly this information is extremely helpful to understand our legacy of violence against women over the centuries and a general study of the dynamics of male domination. Feminist philosophic thought is probably one of the major contributions to Western culture in the last 50 or 60 years, and it renders material like this far more useful than the traditional male interpretations of it in the last 50 years. Floor, where there'll be other rooms relating to the themes I've just been discussing. Briefly, we'll look into these library rooms. I'll just reiterate, this room deals with philosophy, then the room in through there deals with theology, cross-referential, and this room deals with death and with fascism, and with various theories relating to suicide and euthanasia. We'll go into the philosophy room. The philosophy room, like the art biography room, is in alphabetical order, so it goes from Adorno right round all the way spiralically down to Wittgenstein. This is, in theory, the largest room. It will be about 70 feet long once built on the top floor as planned, and is again very, very specialised. So you have first editions of Descartes and of Leibniz and of Hume and of Immanuel Kant and whatever, but it's a very specialised, very solid collection on primarily Western philosophy. The room in here deals with theology, referential, so there's a wall on Islam, there's a section on Christianity, there's a section on Judaism, and there's a section on Zen and Hindu thought. Obviously, again, a diminutive aspect of the full collection. Curiously enough, over the years since I've been collecting since I was 9 years old, the theology section, for one reason or another, is the largest section in the whole collection of the library. But again, raises issues about fanatical behaviour, whether it's the traditional grand religions or whether it's the black box of Joanna Southcote and her secret tracts and the belief that she was having the Christ child in the 1740s, or the Muggletonian psalm sheets, or mysterious and anonymous works of one kind or another, some of them extraordinarily colourful and strange, but still having in common this physiological tendency for the human mind to become so emotionally addicted to a point of view that it will either die for it or kill for it. It has a very specialised collection on death, early histories of death, discorsi morali, dances of death, the ars memoria, sections on suicide, including the earliest books on suicide and on euthanasia. There are also some very colourful sections on the lowlands, highlands of heaven, and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of books on theories about the soul and about afterlife. There's a section here on post-Freudian thought, although the bulk of that is still in boxes. Large sections on definitions of evil from a historical point of view and also of mental illness. The whole of this wall here is preoccupied with anti-Semitism and with German and Italian fascism of one kind or another. Again, a very specialised collection on anti-Semitism with some pretty horrific material, and another that I put together over the years, and they tie in with what I call an aesthetic theory about human attraction, whether it is towards a person, towards an ideology and belief system, or towards objects, or towards the art experience. Personal and subjective responses to events, an example of which is in this cabinet here. This was called, it's a large notebook. It's filled with about 1,000 drawings and watercolours, and deals with obsessive behaviour, in this case in relation to a woman. Over here are unusual artifacts, but more significantly very interesting and rather sad notes here of the Beast of Belsen, the actual trial examinations in 3 huge volumes. One can see here Captain Brown and Major Winwood. I have been given permission to enter number 1 Camp Belsen for the purpose of preparing the defence in the forthcoming trials. So a rather sad and depressing record of a particular brand of fanaticism. Room on the 2nd floor, again in alphabetical order A to Z, but a tiny part of the full collection. And once we built another floor on top of this, and one is to imagine arches going through here to 3 more rooms on 3 more floors, then it's possible for the full collection to be clearly articulated and usable hopefully by local students and by some scholars. Floors, as it goes all the way down through to the metaphysics room where we were earlier. This is the first of the studio rooms. It's hoped that there'll be about 20 to 25 rooms eventually for the libraries, and certainly about 10 quite large rooms for the studios. You can see here an example of one piece from the education project. Each of the projects deals with a specific theme. There have been 18 of those projects, and each one of those projects can consist of up to 500 paintings. This is one of about 300 paintings on the theme of education. It shows a child dying or dead, supported by its mother, myself dressed rather thuggishly in the Union Jack, lowering the child as the soul of the child, metaphorically speaking, rises up and up and up and into the heavens section, weaving its way through all the teachers and educationists. I did find that the education project was the least salutary and the most depressing of all the 18 projects that I've done to date. We're talking about something in the region of 10,000 paintings. And again, as with the library, they have the common point of view that they're an inquiry into fanatical and obsessive behaviour by means of the visual image. This again was a piece from the education project, and it shows the City Museum with the city curator, Mr. Barber, now deceased, lovely man, and his staff all holding their favourite items in the City Museum. It's a pun on a painting by Raphael, a print of which you can see on the ground with a cigarette stubbed out on it, the School of Athens. Scholars seated amongst statuary. I'm seated on the stairs behind. It's an ironic image. The first of the projects on vagrancies, many years ago, there were 500 paintings on the theme of vagrancy, which is just a nice word for alcoholism. The breweries had turned the world alcoholic to fill their pockets. And there's a character known as the Bishop, long dead, looking rather astonished. One of the largest studio rooms is this one. And you see here a painting about 50 feet long called The Temptation of St. Anthony. Again, an ironic image from the last project, Project 18, that was recently displayed in the International Convention Centre. Project 18 was called The Painter with Women, Observations on the Theme of the Double. It was an ironic inquiry into human relationships. Again, from another point of view, the formulas used were The Temptation of St. Anthony, of which this is the main representation, and the Legend of Aristotle and Phyllis, an example which I'll show in a moment. Basically, you see here, Southside Street on a Saturday night with a big street fight is a metaphor for hell, and these temptresses of one kind or another, and the viewer is St. Anthony. It looked very dramatic once presented in the International Convention Centre with its 14-inch thick frame. It was interesting because it's an ancient medieval metaphor, kind of a bit of French libel against the Catholic Church, suggesting that Aristotle was susceptible to Alexander the Great's girlfriend's wiles. And in this particular case, in order to come to some agreement, it was understood that she should ride his back. He should be on all fours, naked on the ground, either in his library or in the garden, and she on top of him. It's a typical metaphor for passion riding reason. And it relates to the theme known as the folly of wise men. This painting up here was one of the paintings on the theme of sexual behaviour, which was a very large project a few years ago, and it shows a woman with her psychiatrist involved in some aspect of sexual therapy. This painting, a local glue sniffer, now in prison, which was hung in the exhibition on education adjacent to the portrait of the Chief Education Officer. This painting was one of the pieces again from the Vagrancy project many years ago, and it shows the town crier mourning over Plymouth's unfortunates. Again, it's an ironic pun on the seven sleepers of Ephesus. And it shows one of the warehouses that I used to break into in those days when I had over 700 of these people sleeping rough. And all these people, like the bishop, Alan, Diogenes, the singer, Mad Mick, Corky, Mephistopheles, the Roadrunner, all long dead now, but a plaintive image. Was from the project on death, which consisted of about 200 paintings, many of them of dying people. And again, it's an ironic theme, the Pietà, and it shows myself dead, surrounded by some of my children and their mothers. The same theme on sexual behaviour is called the rape, and it's also the five senses mocking Christ. A grisile. Shows earlier work, one or two pieces that I'm working on at present like this. This is the design for the Last Judgment window, which is now hung in stained glass at the top of a building adjacent to this one, and lit up at night. Originally it was designed to be 72 feet wide, but the architects and the engineers lost their nerve and it ended up 5 feet. Portrait when I was 16, young, innocent and enthusiastic. And now I'm just innocent and enthusiastic. Here, called Interior. I was very interested in those days in themes like time and silence and stillness, and made some effort to evoke that in this particular piece. Another room, which is down this way, has other work. In here, is one of, again, 200, 300 paintings on the theme of sexual behaviour. And it showed it was actually painted while the lady was in labour, and then the child born, painted more or less straight afterwards. It's a painting I'm rather fond of. Again, two more paintings. This one from the self-portrait theme, and it shows myself aged about 30, 34 years old, with myself at 90 on my own lap. And this one, likewise, shows myself, but instead of myself at 90 on my own lap are two of my sons, Wolf and Reuben. Without over-repeating myself, the number of paintings being shown are just a minuscule in relation to what's been done. One should understand they're very large-scale projects. They go on here, and they usually every 2 to 3 years. It's a serious, massive inquiry into the origins of fanatical behaviour, with a library as a backup, with private notes, some of them somewhat eccentric, but nonetheless very serious, and an ongoing process of projects. In order for this to occur, and to be really active and energetic, the permanent maintenance and ownership by a trust of this building is vital. And local authority are very enthusiastic and interested, and there are all kinds of people involved in trying to make this happen, and it's looking very positive at the moment. Thank you, that's all I've got to say.